If you grew up in the 1970s, you knew her as the girl next door. She was the perfect older sister, the teen idol whose poster was taped up on countless bedroom walls. Marsha Brady, with that radiant smile, flowing blonde hair, and effortlessly cool vibe, wasn't just a character. She was a cultural phenomenon. She was the girl every other girl wanted to be, and every boy had a crush on. On screen, her biggest dramas were getting smacked in the nose with a football or figuring out who to take to the school dance. Problems that were always neatly wrapped up in under 30 minutes. She was, for all intents and purposes, perfect. But the actress who brought Marsha to life, Maureen McCormick, was living a life that was anything but. It was a secret life, a world away from the sunny sound stages of Paramount. One filled with pain, self-destruction, and a darkness that was the total opposite of the happy-go-lucky Brady household. At the peak of her fame, after the Brady Bunch, Maureen McCormick was secretly battling a severe addiction, haunted by demons nobody could see. Years later, in her shockingly honest memoir, she made a confession that stunned the world and shattered the pristine image of Marsha Brady forever. She admitted that she had hit a low so deep, she had traded sex for cocaine. This is the story of how America's sweetheart plummeted to rock bottom. A journey through the dark side of Hollywood fame that nearly cost her everything. It's a story of addiction, mental illness, and devastating family secrets. But it's also a story of incredible resilience, of a fight for her life, and of one woman's long, hard journey to finally find her own voice, one completely separate from the iconic character that had both defined and almost destroyed her. This is the story of Maureen McCormick, and it's not what you think. Born on August 5, 1956, in Encino, California, Maureen McCormick was the youngest of 4 kids. From a young age, it was obvious she had that certain sparkle. When she was just 6, she won the Baby Miss San Fernando Valley beauty pageant, a small-town honor that was just a hint of the massive fame waiting for her. By 1964, her bright, all-American look landed her on national TV in commercials for 2 of the biggest toys of the era, Barbie and the Chatty Cathy doll. Her face was becoming familiar, and she started popping up in guest spots on hit sitcoms, like Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie. But in 1969, her life changed forever. She landed the role of Marsha Brady on the new ABC sitcom The Brady Bunch. The show, a simple story about a lovely lady and a man named Brady blending their 2 families, became a cultural touchstone. It was a picture of American family life that was wholesome, loving, and something everyone aspired to. And right at the center of this perfect world was Marsha, the eldest Brady daughter. Marsha was everything a teenage girl in the 70s was supposed to be: beautiful, popular, a great student, and a kind sister. She was the it girl who always had a date, who handled sibling squabbles with grace, and whose biggest problem was which cute boy to like. For 5 seasons, from 1969 to 1974, Maureen played this perfection so well that for most people, the line between the actress and the character completely blurred. To the world, she was Marsha Brady. The show was a massive hit. Even after it ended, it lived on in reruns for decades, charming new generations of fans. Its popularity led to a bunch of spin-offs and reunion movies, like The Brady Bunch Hour, and A Very Brady Christmas, with Maureen always coming back to play Marsha. She and her castmates were cemented in pop culture history. They felt more like family members than actors to the millions who grew up with them. That bond was real for the cast, too. They navigated their teenage years together on set. Maureen, he'd even had a real off-screen romance with Barry Williams, who played her TV brother Greg, a relationship that famously included a first kiss while the cast was in Hawaii. On the surface, it was a dream come true, but, as she'd later reveal, the pressure to keep up that perfect image was crushing. The reality of her life was a world away from Marsha Brady's carefree existence. She later wrote about this suffocating feeling, saying, "I had played Marsha Brady for 5 years, but I wasn't her in any way, shape or form. She was perfect. I was anything but that." While the world saw a smiling, happy teen, a storm was brewing just under the surface, one that was about to rage out of control. The perfect Brady family on TV stood in heartbreaking contrast to the reality of Maureen's own home life, which was filled with instability and dark secrets. This huge gap between her on-screen world and her off-screen reality created a deep-seated anxiety that started early. She felt like a total imposter, hiding her real self behind the Marsha mask. This internal conflict became the breeding ground for her lifelong battles with anxiety and depression. She described having this deep-down sadness even as a little girl, a pain she couldn't explain but that never really left. One of the darkest secrets she carried was a terrifying family history of mental illness. In her book, she revealed a shocking truth she learned about her grandmother, who had been locked away in a mental institution with syphilis. The horror got worse when she learned that her own mother, Irene, had gotten the disease from her grandmother in the womb. This discovery haunted Maureen for years. "I thought that I had syphilis growing up my whole life," she confessed in an interview. "I thought that I would also go insane and end up in a mental institution. It was awful." That fear was so real that she would sometimes use it to make herself cry in scenes on the Brady Bunch. The family's pain didn't stop there. Her grandfather had killed himself just a week after his wife died, and in her own generation, her brothers struggled with schizophrenia and drug problems. Growing up in a house where so much pain was kept secret, she learned to hide everything. "Secrets are no good," she later said. "I was brought up in a family where we had so many secrets. The pressure to be the perfect one, both on TV and, maybe, to make up for the chaos at home, became an unbearable weight as she became a teenager." The normal insecurities everyone feels were amplified 1,000 times by global fame. While playing Marsha, she was also trying to get through public high school, which was a bizarre experience for someone so recognizable. It was around this time her battle with bulimia began. At 17, she heard some girls talking about how they could eat a ton of ice cream and not gain weight by purging. "It seemed ideal," she recalled. "Once I started, it was hard to stop. The pressure to look a certain way was relentless, especially when post-Brady roles on shows like The Love Boat required her to be in a swimsuit, making her incredibly self-conscious." The end of the Brady Bunch in 1974 wasn't a relief. It was a terrifying freefall. Suddenly, the structure that had defined her for 5 critical years was gone. She wasn't Marsha Brady anymore, but she had no idea who Maureen McCormick was supposed to be. Typecast and struggling to find serious roles, she felt completely lost. She recalled bombing an audition for a role as a prostitute in Midnight Express because the producers just couldn't see past her wholesome image. It was in this empty space that she started looking for an escape in the glamorous, dangerous world of Hollywood nightlife, searching for an identity and a way to numb the pain. She wrote, "I sought refuge in seemingly glamorous cocaine dens. Above Hollywood, I was simply running farther from myself. The cracks in the facade were starting to shatter, setting the stage for a devastating fall. In the years after the Brady Bunch, Maureen's search for herself spiraled into a addiction that wrecked her life and career. The wholesome image of Marsha Brady was swallowed by a dark reality of drugs, parties, and self-destruction. Her descent started in the glittery, dangerous world of 1970s Hollywood. She fell in with a fast-paced rock and roll crowd where drugs were everywhere. What began as just experimenting quickly turned into a 5-year-long addiction to cocaine and quaaludes. She described her cocaine use as an all-consuming obsession. "If there was coke, I had to stay up and do every last flake." She wrote, "Nothing else mattered." Her life became a chaotic mess of partying and chasing her next fix. She was a regular at drug dens on Wonderland Avenue and wild parties at the Playboy Mansion, always looking for a high that could quiet the anxiety and depression that followed her everywhere. But the escape never lasted, and she always came crashing back to an even more desperate reality. Her addiction started tearing down the career she'd worked so hard to build. Piece by piece, she got a reputation in the industry for being flaky and unreliable. Complete 180 from the professional kid she used to be. Directors and producers started to avoid her. One producer, fed up with her unpredictability, warned her that she'd never work as an actress again. Her parents knew something was terribly wrong but were powerless. She was so good at hiding the extent of her addiction that it took them years to understand how bad it was. At one point, they were so desperate they thought about turning her into the police. The most infamous and tragic example of how her addiction sabotaged her career was a blown audition with the legendary director Steven Spielberg. She was up for a role in his new movie, a little project that would become the blockbuster classic, Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was the kind of role that could have completely changed her career and finally broken the Marsha Brady typecast. But she showed up to the meeting high on cocaine after being awake for 3 days. She needed help. Alongside her addiction, she was dealing with the consequences of her past. Before she was 21, during the height of this reckless period, she'd had 2 abortions. The experience was deeply painful and another secret she kept hidden for decades, adding to the profound sense of being broken and unworthy, feeling so at odds with her public image. Her financial situation had also become desperate. The money from the Brady Bunch residuals was drying up, and her reputation as an unreliable actress meant steady work was gone. There were times she could barely make ends meet. The tabloids started circling, running cruel stories that painted her as a tragic fallen star. But perhaps the ultimate rock bottom was the admission that she had traded her body for drugs. It represented a complete loss of self-worth, a point where the addiction had stripped away her dignity. It was a devastating fall for someone who had been put on a pedestal of perfection by an entire generation. Looking back, she described this period as a spiral downward on a path of self-destruction that cost me my career and very nearly my life. She felt totally alone, lost in a haze of drugs and depression. A world away from the loving TV family, millions of people invited into their homes every week. This was the abyss. From here, she would have to start the long, incredibly difficult climb back to the light. The moment that changed everything wasn't a big career comeback. It was a quiet meeting in a church. In 1984, she met an actor named Michael Cummings. Remarkably, he'd heard of the Brady Bunch but had never actually seen it. He saw Maureen for who she was, not as Marsha Brady. They fell in love and got married on March 16, 1985. Their marriage would become the anchor in her turbulent life. Michael became her biggest ally in the fight for sobriety. Early on, while she was still struggling, he gave her a loving but firm ultimatum. He told her, "You know, it's either me or that. Take it or I'm out of here." Recalling that moment, McCormick said, "It woke me up. It was like the coldest shower you could ever take. There's just no way I'm going to lose somebody that I love." This was the push she needed. With her husband's unwavering support, she finally began the serious work of getting clean. The journey wasn't easy. She went through interventions and rehab stints. Sobriety didn't magically fix her depression and paranoia, which she still battled for years, but her marriage gave her a stability she'd never known. A significant breakthrough finally came in the 1990s when she started taking antidepressants. She described the effect as a wonderful awakening, as if she could finally feel relief from the pain that had shadowed her for so long. Her public healing process began to take shape. In 2007, she joined VH1's Celebrity Fit Club, hoping to lose weight she'd gained after her mother's death. The experience was transformative. She was open about the link between her weight and her depression, and she ended up losing 34 pounds and winning the whole competition. This public victory was also a private one, giving her the confidence to speak her truth. That confidence led to her 2008 autobiography, Here's the Story: Surviving Marsha Brady and Finding My True Voice. The book was a raw, no-holds-barred account of her entire life. It was a huge success, debuting at number 4 on the New York Times bestseller list. But more importantly, it was an act of liberation. By telling her own story, in her own words, she was finally taking back her own narrative. As she put it, "It felt so good to let the world know I was human and suffered from depression, and I wasn't that perfect person everyone thought I was." In the years since, she's continued to embrace being herself, competing on Dancing with the Stars and facing her fears head on. The road had been brutal, but Maureen McCormick was finally finding her way back. So, who is Maureen McCormick today, at 68? She's a woman who hasn't just survived her past, she's embraced it as part of her story. The journey from the depths of despair to a life of peace and sobriety has been long, but it's been a triumphant one. "I'm so happy to be sober and to be really clear and comfortable in my skin," she said recently. That comfort is the hard-won prize after decades of feeling like a fraud. Her marriage to Michael Cummings remains the cornerstone of her life. After nearly 40 years and raising their daughter, Natalie, she still credits his love with saving her life. Professionally, she's found a new groove, taking on projects that bring her joy, like the HGTV series, A Very Brady Renovation. She's also become a passionate advocate for mental health awareness, inspired by her brother. By sharing her own harrowing story, she's helped fight the stigma, telling people that mental illness is a disease and it's nothing to be ashamed of. The ghost of Marsha Brady doesn't haunt her anymore. While she once hated the constant comparison, She's made peace with the character's legacy. She understands what Marsha meant to people, but she is no longer defined by her. In her memoir, she wrapped it all up with a powerful statement of self-acceptance. It turned out I was perfect in my imperfections. Maureen McCormick's story isn't the simple, sunny tale of a TV icon. It's a complex, raw, and deeply human story of a woman who was handed a script for a perfect life and spent decades learning how to write her own. It's a narrative of hitting rock bottom and showing the incredible resilience it takes to climb back up. At 68, she has finally opened up, and her real story is one of survival, hope, and the profound peace that comes from finally finding and loving your own true voice. If you were inspired by Maureen McCormick's incredible story of survival and strength, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more true stories about the real lives behind the camera. Thanks for watching.